Buenas tardes a todos los que se están conectando. Eh, Vamos a dar inicio al webinar del día de hoy, tan esperado por muchos. Presentamos en esta oportunidad al profesor Darren Morton, director, en un minuto, vamos a decir todo en español, ya, director del Centro de Investigación de Medicina y Salud de Estilo de Vida de Avondale, ¿ya? Quien es además es un académico de amplia trayectoria, autor de múltiples publicaciones científicas y creador de Life Project, programa de salud mental y bienestar, que ha beneficiado a más de decenas de miles de personas en más de 50 países. Así que les contamos además que contamos con traducción simultánea que ustedes pueden activar abajito donde dice interpretación, no sé cómo les figura en su Zoom, y de ahí la salida que ustedes quieren dar, si es español o si quieren escuchar el audio original, ¿ya? Así que damos inicio. Darren, puedes compartir pantalla.
Hello, hello. Um, I it's lovely to be here with you. I apologize that I can't speak other languages, but I'm very, very grateful for having Camilla here, who will be interpreting for me as we go through. But it's a very special privilege for me to be joining you, and I hope as we explore this topic of how to thrive, that we have some fun together and learn some new things. And what I would love as we went through today is to ask you to reflect on how you're doing in these different areas that we're going to be talking about. Because as carers, and that we need to be caring for ourselves as well. And so I hope that as we go through this session and look at what it takes to thrive, that there are some things that might jump out at you, and maybe you can implement and activate in your own life just a little bit more. So that would be a great thing. So I didn't quite understand the I didn't hear the interpretation on the introduction, but my name is Darren, and yes, I'm based at Avondale University here in Australia. I'm sure that my accent has probably given away where I'm from, but I'm the director of the Lifestyle Medicine and Health Research Centre here at Avondale University, and I also run a lifestyle medicine program that focuses on mental health and well-being, which is called the LIFT Project, and that's used all around the world. So it's a special privilege to be with you. And so let me share my screen with you, and we'll get started. All right. Can someone just give me the thumbs up if we're seeing slides okay? Excellent.
Yes.
All right. Excellent. So we're going to talk about how to thrive, and I am very much immersed in the lifestyle medicine world, and I'm very passionate about lifestyle medicine. But I'm going to talk a little bit, and we will be talking about lifestyle medicine, but we're going to take another look at another area that I'm very, very interested in as well, which has really grown over the past 20 years or so, grown with lifestyle medicine. And these two fields are very complementary, but up until probably 5 years or so ago, they didn't connect as nicely. But now there's a lot of connection between these two areas. And the area that I'm talking about is positive psychology. And I would like to share with you the story on how this all started. It actually began with this man here, and he was in 1997. This is Martin Seligman, and Professor Martin Seligman, he was voted as the president of the American Psychological Association. And when he was voted in as president, they invited him to decide what the theme, what should be, what should the American Psychological Society, what should they focus in on for the next period of time while he was president. And he had this very interesting experience with his young daughter. So his daughter was only 5 years at the time, 5 years old. But his daughter said to him, "Dad, you're a grump and you need to stop being so grumpy." And anyway, he said that he realized, because he said, "Yeah, he acknowledges that he's a grumpy person." And he said what he realized is that as a psychologist who was at the very top of his field, he was now voted as the president of the American Psychological Association. And yet, at the top of his field as a psychologist, he realized that he didn't have a lot of skills or a lot of knowledge on how to be less grumpy. He said, in psychology, we'd focused on what he called mending misery, trying to help people who had something, going wrong or some sort of dysfunction, and helping them to just to be normal again, whatever normal is. But he said, when do we as psychologists help people to do better than okay? To move into more positive states. And so he actually he launched this new field within psychology referred to as positive psychology. So it's focused on, how do we actually help people to move into more positive realms? And not just people, not just individuals, but couples and families and communities and workplaces and even countries. How do we help these, how do we move into these more positive realms, not just mend the misery? And so this field of positive psychology, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the research that's been done in this space, but it's today a very popular area, and the research in this space has exploded. And I need to stress that it's very much an evidence-based approach to understanding what it takes for us humans to thrive, right? To do better than okay. And so Martin Seligman, there are now many academic journals. There are thousands of studies that have been conducted trying to understand what it takes for us humans to thrive. How do we thrive? And a little while back, Martin Seligman wrote a book. And the name of the book was called Flourish. And flourish is the term that they use within the positive psychology realm that captures that essence of thriving. So those two words, thriving, flourishing, are often used interchangeably. Martin Seligman wrote a book, and in that book, he said that, which is called Flourishing, he said, there seems to be, with all of the research we've done, all the studies we've conducted, there seems to be five things, five components in our life that are pathways for human flourishing, right? That help us to thrive in life. And he created this acronym, which is PERMA, PERMA. And these represent these five pillars, these five pathways to flourishing. Now, I think they're very good, the five pathways he's identified. But I have met Professor Martin Seligman on a couple of occasions. And here is me meeting him at a conference. We actually presented at the same conference. And I was chatting with Professor Seligman, and I said, I really like your five things, your PERMA, but I think you should shuffle the order around to change the order. And we talked about this, and the reason for it, I think that if you look at these five things, some of them provide more deeper levels of thriving and flourishing, where others provide more superficial levels of flourishing and thriving. And so I proposed to Martin Seligman, and he said, like academics, we always like to argue about things, and we never quite agree on everything. But he said to me, yeah, I'm not sure that I agree with you completely, But if you want to change the order, then you have my blessing to do so. So I have changed the order. So instead of perma like that, I have perm. Okay, now in English, for those who are not familiar, we have like a big hair that's called a perm. So I've just put this picture here just to help you remember what this perm, this little acronym might stand for. And my question is, what do you think these five things are? What do you think are these five pathways to a flourishing life or a thriving life? And so as we go through, I want you to think, maybe I'll give you one moment now. In fact, maybe in the chat function, what do you think might be the five things people seem to need in their life to truly thrive, to truly flourish? Now, I will say at the end of this presentation, we'll have some time for some questions and answers. And at that time, maybe we can look and see how you've gone in the chat function. And if anyone got 100% full marks. So let's see. So what is it? What does the research say about what we humans need to flourish or to thrive? Well, number one, and I'll take note here that I put this at the top because I think this is the most superficial form of flourishing or thriving. And I'll come back to that my reason for that in just a moment. But the first one is what's referred to as positive emotion. So these are for people to thrive in life, they need times of feeling good. And there are all those sorts of emotions. We're talking about joy, we're talking about happiness, we're talking about contentment, we're talking about peace. These emotions that feel good to experience. These are these positive emotions. Well, what's interesting is that there is a lot of research now coming out of the lifestyle medicine space showing that whilst lifestyle medicine was historically focused on physical health, what we know is that what's good for your physical health, what's good for your body, is also really good for your brain, for your mental health as well. And I think it's very encouraging, particularly in the world where we have a mental health crisis. I think it's encouraging that we have this movement and recognition that lifestyle behaviors, the pillars of lifestyle medicine, are really, really good for our mental health as well. And I think this is a really important step forward for lifestyle medicine. In fact, they're now referring to it as lifestyle psychiatry, right? And many countries around the world are saying that lifestyle-based therapies should be frontline. These should be the first things we do to help people with affective disorders like depression and anxiety. And so lifestyle medicine and the pillars of lifestyle medicine has so much to contribute to our experience of more positive emotion. And let's just have a little look at that before we move in to see what the other letters were, the other four things are. I have this little saying, motion creates emotion, right? And what I mean by that is that how you move and what we do with our body has a big effect on how we feel and our experience of positive emotion. And if we were in maybe we can do this anyway. I don't know how this will translate, but I'd love for you to hold your finger out like this and point your hand, and then close your eyes and see if you can touch your nose. Okay. If you did that, well done. If you were successful with that. So the question is, how do we know where our nose is? And as we all know, we actually have distributed throughout our bodies, the estimate is somewhere between 6 to 10 million tiny proprioceptors that feed information up to our brain and tell our brain where our body parts are in space at any particular time. And it's an incredibly powerful sense. In fact, proprioception is so powerful that it's been said that without it, our brain is lost. Our brain is lost in space without this sense of proprioception. Well, on the way to our thinking brain, the proprioceptors pass directly through our emotional brain, through the limbic structures of the brain. And so this is why how we move and what we do with our bodies influences our emotional state. And of course, what we also know, and it's very interesting, the research that's occurring in this space, is that when our muscles contract, we produce myokines, which flood the rest and flow throughout the rest of our body and influence our emotional states. And so, in brief, our movement patterns, and which is one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine, have a big effect on how we feel and our experience of positive emotion. In fact, I would go as far as saying that that exercise or movement or physical activity is one of the most powerful antidepressants we have available to us. And yet it's not utilised. Many clinical trials show that exercise therapy is even as effective as antidepressant medication for helping to relieve affective conditions. So there is huge value in exercise and activity and movement for promoting more positive emotion. What's alarming is that we know that over the past, particularly 20, 30, 40 years, we've seen a very big reduction in movement patterns. And what this means is that our proprioceptors, right, and our myokines, they're not stimulated. And hence we're seeing, I think it's contributing to this reduced mood and this reduced experience of positive emotion. There is much research now, including meta-analyses, showing that when people get active, it alleviates depression and it produces more positive emotional states. And the research indicates that happens within 10 minutes. So within 10 minutes of getting people to move, right, and it doesn't need to be hard, doesn't need to be high intensity, but within 10 minutes of getting people to be more active, we see improvements in their mood states, more positive emotion. And so I think that one of the messages we need to communicate is that, yes, exercise, pillar of lifestyle medicine, is very good for our body and very good for our physical health, but it's exceptionally good for our brain and positive mental health. Now, if we were in the room together, I would say to you that I think it can even happen. Movement lifts our mood in even less than 10 minutes. And I would play this little video, and you actually probably won't be able to hear it anyway, but this little video, I would get you to follow along with this video. Oh, it's not playing anyway, so you're all safe. But the video is of a children's musical group we have in Australia here called The Wiggles. And in this little song they sing, they say, one finger, one thumb, keep moving. One finger, one thumb, keep moving. One finger, one thumb, keep moving. We'll all be happy and bright. And then it builds. And then I ask you to go one finger, one thumb, one arm, one leg, one nod of the head, stand up, turn around, sit down, keep moving. We'll all be happy and bright. And I think there's real wisdom in the words of that song. We need to just encourage people to just move more, right? They don't have to do exhaustive exercise, but to move more is a very powerful pathway to feeling better. Motion creates emotion. It's one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine. But we know that other pillars of lifestyle medicine also contribute to this positive emotion, which we know helps us thrive. For example, nutrition. And there's been a great interest. In fact, some Australian researchers have taken the lead in the research of how food affects our mood, right? How nutrition influences our mental health. And once again, it's encouraging to see this terminology being used, such as nutritional psychiatry. And it fits under that banner of, lifestyle psychiatry. So it's really encouraging to see increased recognition within, the psychology and psychiatry fields, recognizing the importance and value of healthy eating. And what we know is that dietary interventions, particularly promoting high fiber, whole plant-based eating patterns and the like, are very good for actually as treatment therapies for people suffering from things like depression. And what we also know is that people that tend to eat more fruits and vegetables and plant foods tend to report higher experiences of positive emotion. And what the research seems to suggest is that there is a dose-response connection between how much, how many serves of whole plant-based foods you consume each day, and your level of happiness, right? Your positive emotional states. And it seems that at around about, it keeps coming up and it plateaus off at around about 8 serves per day. So this is a great objective, a goal for people to be encouraged towards, the more of these whole plant-based foods you can consume, generally the happier you will be. What is interesting, is that there even some research shows there's a day lag. So there's between eating like this and how you're feeling. And so, for example, if you eat more fruits and vegetables today, you are more likely to experience more positive emotions tomorrow. And why that day? Of course, it's because of the digestive processes that occur and this connection we're learning between our gut microbiome and our human health and happiness. I think this is and clearly I know that many of you would be familiar with this research already, but I think this is a very fascinating area, when we come to understand that we have about 10 times more bacteria in our gut than we have human cells in our body. And that we live symbiotically with this gut bacteria, so that if they are happy and healthy, we are more likely to be happy and healthy as well. And of course, what we know is that the best thing that we can to do to make these bugs happy and healthy is to feed them well. And they love fiber. And fiber, of course, is only found in unprocessed plant foods. Hence that connection there. So one of this other pillar of lifestyle medicine is a powerful pathway towards experiencing more positive emotion, which is that first, in that little perm, P, positive emotion. Nutrition plays an important role there, as does sleep. And so we know that, once again, another pillar of lifestyle medicine, very important for helping people to experience more positive emotion. And I don't need to convince anyone, I'm sure, with any research studies. We all know that when we don't prioritize our sleep and we don't obtain enough sleep, we're not experiencing a lot of positive emotion. We definitely go that direction instead. And in fact, functional MRI studies quite clearly demonstrate that when people are sleep deprived, like in the second image there, then and they're shown images that are mildly confronting. What we know is when people are sleep deprived, those emotional regions of the brain, like the amygdala, they light up, a whole lot more. So when we are sleep deprived, we are primed towards being reactive and negative emotion. Whereas when we're well rested, that's we have a tendency not to experience that. I want to do a fun little experiment with you just now. So I'm going to put on the screen a group of words, and I'm going to give you 10 seconds to see how many of these words you can remember. Okay, are you ready? Here are the words. See how many of these you can remember. You have 10 seconds starting from now. Dum 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 dum. All right. So on your hand, how many can you count? How many words can you remember that were on that list just a moment ago? Okay, well, someone's up to 4, 5, maybe. Oh, this is good. I see some hands there. 5. Okay, well done. Well, here's the interesting thing. First of all, not surprisingly, if you are sleep deprived, you tend to remember less words. Okay. But here's the interesting thing. What I didn't tell you before I showed you the words is that some of those words are quite positive. So, for example, happy, calm, friend. Probably maybe this activity didn't translate so well, but then some of the words are a bit negative, like grief and angry and crash, and then others are quite neutral. Well, here's the interesting thing. Studies show that when people are sleep deprived, they're about 2.5 times more likely to remember the negative words. So it's once again, there's evidence that our brains, when we are not prioritizing and caring for that other pillar of lifestyle medicine, we're more inclined to experience negative emotion, not positive emotion, which is a pathway to thriving. So we need to rest to feel our best. That's the way I like to say it. So what you can see is that the pillars of lifestyle medicine, activity, physical activity, nutrition, sleep, these are all pathways to more positive emotion, which helps us to flourish. I'd like to say this one too. This isn't recognized as one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine, but it might be one day. There's actually Dr. Melissa Sunderman from the United States. She actually wrote an article titled Nature as Medicine, in brackets, the seventh pillar, the unofficial seventh pillar of lifestyle medicine. As we know, there are 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine at the moment. She's saying we should have a 7th pillar, and that 7th pillar should be nature. And certainly there is very good evidence to show that natural environments, exposure to nature is very good for our both physical and particularly our mental health as well. And certainly it's a pathway towards experiencing more positive emotion. This was a study conducted in New Zealand, which is between Australia and where you live, closer to Australia. But what they here in the capital, which is Auckland, they actually mapped the prevalence of anxiety and depression, and they looked to see how closely people lived to blue and green spaces, how much access they had to these natural environments. And what they found, for every 1% increase in blue and green spaces, there is a 4% reduction in depression and anxiety and mood disorders. So what that means is that if you could double your access to blue and green spaces, to nature, that's a 400, which would be 100% increase. There is a 400% reduction in depression and anxiety. And so there's a lot of research trying to understand what is it that is so great about the great outdoors. And certainly one factor that's very evidence-based is how much light we're exposed to in those outdoor environments. I'm sure that you are familiar with we call it SAD, seasonal affective disorder. And this is where in countries with very high latitude, with during winter, where there's low lighting for extended periods of time, it affects people's emotional brain. Depression's very high, suicidal ideation very high. And in fact, in those parts of the world, they use bright light therapy. And this is you can actually purchase these products. It's like a bright light emitting device, and people will have it set up at the side whilst they read their morning paper or do their morning work or eat their breakfast. And what we know is that bright light therapy has once again been shown to be as effective as antidepressant medication for helping people with depressive symptoms. Here's the interesting thing. It seems that from our best estimate, your emotional brain, right, the limbic structures of your brain, need around about 10,000 lux for about 20 to 30 minutes each day for us to be well. So sort of have that number in your head. So 10,000 lux, and lux is just a measure of the brightness of light. Well, where do you find that sort of brightness? Well, outside on a bright sunny day, you are immersed in around 100,000 lux. Okay, so there's a lot of light. And by the way, this doesn't mean staring at the sun, so don't do that. But it just means you're immersed. All the light intensity all around you is very bright. So 100,000 lux, easy to receive 10,000 lux for 20 or 30 minutes if you're in that space. In fact, you don't even need 20 or 30 minutes because you have so much more light. Even on in a bright sunny day standing in the shade, there is still around 25,000 lux. But indoors, in indoor spaces, even that when they're brightly lit, often there is no more than about 500 lux. And so you can see if people spend all of their time indoors, this can become a major problem. In fact, and the average adult in most sort of developed countries are spending around 96% of their time indoors, which means that even though the sun might be shining outside, they're in these relatively low lit spaces, right? And I don't know about you, but if you've ever had a long day and you're indoors and you're sort of stuck indoors, and then you get a moment to go outside, you almost feel it like something changes. Certainly for me, it's like, oh, you feel like you're coming alive. And so I think there needs to be a lot more discussion and a lot more promotion of just getting outside whilst the sun is shining, right? Even on overcast days, there's more light outside than there is indoors. And so I think natural light is a really powerful pathway to experiencing more positive emotion. Interestingly, computer screens, do you know that they only emit around about 100 to 150 lux? So we're talking very low lighting here. And I worry for young people, in Australia, and I'm sure it's the same in your part of the world. We have young people who will lock themselves away in a room, low lighting, playing computer games and on devices. It's their emotional brain, the limbic structures of their brain are not adequately stimulated. Right. And so it's little wonder that we're seeing this epidemic of depression. So big picture, let's just loop back to where, what we're talking about. What does it take to thrive? What does it take to flourish in life? Well, we know that the experience of positive emotion is important, right? And it feels good to feel good, right? We all like to experience positive emotion, and I hope you experience lots of it, right? Because it does feel good to feel good, and certainly the pillars of lifestyle medicine are very good pathways for helping us to experience that. However, and this is why I put positive emotion right up the top. Because the problem with positive emotion is that you can't experience it all of the time, right? It's life on planet Earth has moments that aren't so fun, right? And not only that, we actually have circumstances in our life sometimes where things go really bad, right? And we are not going to be, in the place where we're experiencing positive emotion. In fact, we might experience sort of, negative emotions, and at those times, that's a valuable thing. That's appropriate for a time, right? So, and I think this is an important thing to recognize. No one's saying that everyone should be up here, 24/7 all day, every day. That's not how the world works. There is a time for everything. There is a time for everything. There is a time for positive emotion, but there's also a time, when we might feel down as well. And what the research also indicates, as we know with any sort of health condition, is that genetics also plays a role in here. The studies show clearly that some people can access positive emotions a lot easier than other people can experience positive emotion. We all know people who are very excitable and seem to, happiness seems to come easy to them, whereas others, it's a bit more of a challenge. And so if we look at the consensus of what the research says, what seems to be the case is that our life circumstances and our genetics contribute around about half towards our sort of overall mental well-being, happiness, experience of positive emotion. And then the other half, and this is where I think is really encouraging, is that we get to choose that other half. Right? And it's our lifestyle choices. Once again, it's how we approach our life, the decisions we make, the things that we do on a daily basis that can have that other big impact. So, positive emotion, is it good? Yes. Do I want you to experience lots of it? Yes, I would love that for you. But the reality is that it's not going to be there all the time. And if you try and build a thriving life based on the pursuit of positive emotion, well, it's not going to go well for you in the long term. What we need deeper things in our lives. And this is why I put positive emotion up the top. We need deeper things. What else do we need then? Let's go down one step deeper. What do we need to thrive in life that goes beyond positive emotion? And the word starts with E, and you probably won't get this word. I'm not quite sure that it would translate well anyway. But in English, we say it's engagement. And what does engagement mean? We're not talking about marital engagements or marital bliss, although maybe that might be for at least a little period of time, a pathway to positive emotion. I've got my daughter, my 22-year-old daughter gets married in December this year. And 2 weeks ago, my 21-year-old son just got engaged to be married. And both of them are very excited. And so there's quite a lot of positive emotion going on. And I hope that continues for them for many years to come. But anyway, so it's not about that kind of engagement. It's about these moments of flow. So the key researcher here was Mihail Csikszentmihalyi. And he did a lot of work looking at what does it take for humans to thrive. And he identified this key component of we humans seem to need to spend at least some time doing activities that completely engage us, right? Those things that we love to do just for the fun of it, right? No one forces you. And when you're doing that particular activity, it's like time flies away. It's like, you're just in the moment, you're enjoying it. We call it you're in a state of flow. And I'm wondering, what does that look like for you? What do you do that actually gives you that sense of flow, that experience of flow that you just completely engage with? And it's different for different people. And that's a beautiful thing because we are all different. Perhaps for you, like this quote here, he talks about for him, it's music, and jazz, playing jazz. And it's like he's just so in the moment. For me, no one wants to listen to me play jazz because I'm not that talented. But what I love to do, I love to be in nature and being active. And I love particularly the water and water sports. And so I do I don't know if you've seen kite surfing, and I go out in the ocean here in Australia on my kite surfer. You've got this little board under your feet and this kite in the air, and it's windy. And I there is something I will ride my kite surfer out way out into the ocean, and I'm just out there and there's big waves and it's windy and I sing really loudly to myself and I'm full of the joy of living, right? I just love it. What's your thing? What's your moments of flow? What is it that truly engages you? And you know what I'd like to say to you is that having moments like that, right, is actually it's a good thing, right? And I know that many of you we're so busy nowadays, and often, we don't take the time for ourselves to just have those little sparkles, those little high moments in our life where we get to do something that we enjoy just for the fun of it. And what I would love to encourage you, if you can, just to try and build a little bit of that into your program, right? Because it makes for a richer life. It definitely helps us thrive when we have those little moments where we know, oh, on the weekend, I get to go out for a little while and do that particular activity. It gives us something to look forward to be excited about. So engagement, having those moments of engaging in things that we love to do. Please do that. Please do that. It's really good and valuable for us. And of course, engagement is actually often accompanied by positive emotion as well. And so it's a good pathway for helping us, to experience that higher thing of positive emotion also. So, however, once again, life isn't always fun, is it? It's not like everything we get to do is completely engaging. There are some times that life is a bit dry. There we have to just do things that we probably wouldn't choose to do if we didn't have to, but that's part of how the world works. And so we can't live our life just experiencing positive emotion, as we've already heard, and doing things that completely engage us. So in order to thrive then, what do we need? We need to go one step deeper. And the next step, the A in this little perm model, is achievement. What the studies clearly show is that when people get to participate in activities that they feel they've achieved, that they've actually accomplished something, maybe that that gives them a sense of mastery. That I did that, and I know that you all know what I'm talking about here. Those times when you've done something, perhaps earning a degree. Like I can guarantee that when you were doing your university studies, probably there were times when there wasn't a lot of positive emotion attached to it. It might not have been highly engaging all of the time because there were things that you had to do. You had to submit assignments, and you wouldn't have chosen to do that out of just for the fun of it, but you had to do that because it was part of the process. But after all of that, when you actually graduate, when you got your degree, there's a sense of that achievement. There's a sense of that accomplishment. And we know that when people experience that, it actually helps them thrive. It does indeed value add to their life, right? And so here's my point. Achievement in some ways is better or can be better than engagement and positive emotion. It's like many years ago, I decided that I wanted to build my own house. So I said to my wife, I feel like, because my father, he was very practical man, and he'd built many houses before, and he would fix cars. And here was I was 30 at the time, so this is 25 years ago. But I turned 30, and I thought, what have I done with my life? My dad, he's done all these amazing things. All I'd done is done research and written theses that were very boring to read. So no one was probably going to read them. And so I thought, I need to do something practical. I need to do something manly. And so anyway, I decided to build a house. And so I uh, I I bought a book on how to build houses. This is true. And I started building my house, and it took me nearly a year. And I can tell you that during this process of building my house, there were times there was not a lot of positive emotion. Right? It was a lot of frustration, in fact. So not a lot of positive emotion, not highly engaging, because a lot of the time didn't fly by. It was like I would plan to do that next part and it would take me about 4 times longer than I thought. And so, there wasn't a lot of high engagement in some regards. But when I finished and when I stand and look at my home, and you want to see a picture of my home? Here it is. Only joking. That's not my home. But to have that sense of actually I don't have a pic. I should have a picture of my actual home. My home doesn't lean anywhere near as much as this one. But when you have that sense of accomplishment, we know there's real that value adds to people's lives. It actually helps them to thrive. And what's really interesting is that, and this Brock Bastian wrote this book, The Other Side of Happiness. And what he points out here is that, and I like the illustration on the front of the cover there, you can see it's someone rolling a heavy ball up the hill. It's some, and what he points out in this book is that, do you know what? There's real satisfaction that comes from doing hard things, right? There's actually value in actually having to strive for something, right? And yeah, it might not be a lot of positive emotion. It might not be highly engaging, but it actually, at the end of it, when we're done, and particularly if it's been a heavy lift, we've had to carry a heavy load, then it actually truly value adds to us. That sense of accomplishment, there's great value in that. And so my question to you is, to what extent do you derive that sense of value, that sense of thriving that comes from accomplishing something important and of value? That was hard to do. And don't I know that you're not the kind of person to be this, but encourage other people that doing something hard, don't shy away from that, right? Doing something hard has huge value in it. It actually adds to our life because it challenges us and it grows us. And so I personally, I always try and have some challenging thing that I'm trying to learn or do or accomplish. And it might be just a small skill like this one. I don't know if you've seen this before, but these are called foils. And you can see it's like a surfboard that has a foil underneath. It's like an aeroplane wing. And you can push off like a little land into the water, and then you hop on this and then you do this like pumping type movement, and you can make the aeroplane wing fly under the water, and you're above the water on the board. And I saw this and I went, wow, that is totally amazing. And I thought I would like to learn that. And so I started to research. And on the internet, it said, it said, if you're over the age of 50, which I am, don't even think about it. And I'm like, right, I'm thinking about it. And so I watched these videos, and you have these young people who just show you how easy it is. They just push this board and they jump on and they pump around, and it's like so easy. And I tried it, and it's not easy. It's not easy at all. And then I saw this particular man who was a little bit older, like me. He has posted on YouTube the first 200 attempts of him trying to dock start. And it is crash, crash, crash that way, crash this way, splat, splat. He doesn't succeed. And I remember watching this video and I thought, I really like this guy. I really like when I see people trying something hard. And you know, it was after about 500 attempts that all of a sudden he started to get it a little bit. And you can see him. He's like, oh, I got it. I went just for a little way, you know, and there was real excitement. You know, you could tell that he was thriving, even though he was very frustrated at times. And there might not have been a lot of, you know, positive emotion attached to it. He actually was thriving. And so I I actually told my kids, I would say to my kids, I'm going to practice my dock starts again. They call it dock starting with this foil. And they would watch me go down. We have a little creek at the back of our place, my home. They'd watch me go down and crash and crash and splat and splat and splash in again. And then I would do it day after day. And I wanted them to see that some things aren't easy. And sometimes we have to work at these things. But it took a long time. But can I show you this little video? This is after 1 year of me practicing this. And I know you
Okay, so
can't
just
hear
under a
the
year
audio.
ago,
Anyway,
I decided I was going to try and learn how to dock start foiling. And this has been hundreds and hundreds of attempts. Here we go.
look at that. I'm doing it. I'm doing it.
Do what's hard.
And my comment to the at the end there is do what's hard. You know, don't shy away from what's hard because challenging yourself, right? We actually know when you achieve it, if you achieve it, gives you that real sense of accomplishment, right? That sense of mastery. And the research shows that genuinely adds value to our life, right? It helps us thrive. And so my question to you is, what are you working towards now? You know, what's the goal that maybe you've set for yourself that's challenging? And what does that look like? And keep going, recognizing that there's value in achieving new things. So, what does it take to flourish? What does it take to thrive? Positive emotion? Yes, there's great value in that. Hard to hang on to, though. Engagement, you know, doing things just for the fun of it. There's great value in that. However, in life, we just have to sometimes do things we don't want to do as well. Having a sense of achievement and accomplishment, right? In some regards, that goes deeper than those other two things. And there's huge value in that. And I would encourage you to go after that. But then we start to get to these, what the research shows are the deeper levels of thriving. You know, the things that we humans seem to need to actually experiencing deep levels of flourishing and thriving. And R stands for, I'm wondering, I'm not, once again, not sure how the translation's going, but what do you think R might stand for? In short, it is relationships, right? Relationships, you know, and the research is consistently showing this, that what we humans need is to be connected, right? And I think that, you know, one of the tragedies here is that that we are so disconnected. In fact, I saw the latest report come through in the United States. Over half of people report feeling lonely, and about 37% of adults report either moderate or severe loneliness, right? And it's because of a whole range of different factors relating to our modern lifestyles, but so many people today are disconnected. This is quite a famous researcher by the name of Robert Biswas Steiner. And what Robert does, he studies what makes people happy. He studies what helps people to thrive and to flourish. And he actually, the way he does it, he does field research. So he goes and just lives with communities of people, and he's lived with in communities all around the world. in even in like the slums in Mumbai in India, with the in Greenland with the Inuit. And he said that he had this one moment where he went and spent time with the Kalahari Bushmen in Africa. And he said on one particular day, he said, I went on a hunt with the men of the tribe. So he was living in the little community that had the little tribe. And he said, we went off on this hunt, and he said it was a really, really hot day. And he said, and we were walking and walking, and he said, I was just so hot and exhausted. And he said a couple of times we got close to some prey, but then the prey ran away. And at the end of the day, they had nothing to show for their efforts. And then the men decided it was time to head back to the village. And as they turned to start heading back, Robert said, I felt just completely like, oh, he said it was like, it had been hot, not a lot of fun. They're not very engaging. There'd been no achievement at all that had, they had nothing to show for what they'd been able to do for the day. But he said, as the men started to walk back to the village, they were singing, and it was this like a very upbeat song, right? A happy song. And he said, for him, it just felt like a very strange song to be singing, that at this sort of a happy tune, because he said, I just felt completely, downcast. And he said, I turned to one of the bushmen and he said, I'm puzzled. He said, you seem happy even though we didn't catch anything. And the bushman says to him, we didn't catch anything, but we didn't catch anything together, right? And so the point is, you know what, when we have community around us, when we have supportive relationships, life is better, regardless of what we're doing, regardless of what we're achieving or not achieving, right? There's something about us humans that loves that connection, and we're designed to exist in community. And what we know, and this is work done from Harvard researchers, is that this is very far-reaching. We know that, for example, this within a social network, and this research has been going on for about 60 years now, starting in the town of Framingham. But what we know is that we influence each other, right? So we're designed to be in community, and we influence each other in very far-reaching ways. In fact, these studies, and this was published in very good academic journals, we know that obesity is socially contagious. We know that happiness and unhappiness is socially contagious, and it actually spreads 3 degrees of separation. Right? So the studies very clearly show that if someone in a social network, say, gets happier or gets less happier, they will spread that to their immediate contacts. But then those people will spread a little bit of that to their contacts, and then their contacts will spread a little bit of it to their contacts as well. Even though that original person has no direct contact with that person, separated by 3 degrees of separation. So they argue in these papers that what we need to start to recognize is that we exist in community, right? That health and happiness is socially contagious, right? And we need to be very aware of that. This is once again, this is the Harvard study of adult development, which commenced in 1938. So very long-lasting study, and what they've found, they've been collecting health metrics on generations now, and this is Robert Waldinger, who's the lead of that study, the current lead. There's been about 5 chief investigators. He's now the current, and this is what he said. He said, when we look at all of the health metrics that we collect on people, what seems to be the case is that those people who are the happiest and who stay the healthiest as they grow older are those who have the warmest connections with other people. Right. So once again, speaking to the power of relationships, we need to prioritize our relationships. We need to nurture our relationships. This needs to be front of mind because it goes deeper than those other pathways to a flourishing life. How do we nurture our relationships? What's the best way to achieve them? I want to share this with you because I think this is a really fascinating but quite insightful approach for how we can nurture relationships. And it was led by research. This is Professor Axelrod from the United States. And this research was done back in the 1980s. And here's what happened. Professor Axelrod said, I want computer programmers to submit what he called a strategy for playing this game called the Prisoner's Dilemma. Okay, and we're going to play this game. So bit of a brain break for a sec. This is how it's going to work. I'm going to get you to hold your hands out like this with your thumb to the side, and then you get to decide. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, reveal. And when I say reveal, you have to decide whether you want to go thumbs up. Let's try that. Or if you want to go thumbs down. Okay. So you can put your hand down for a moment. The way the game works is that if you want to cooperate with me, you go thumbs up. If you want to compete against me, you go thumbs down. And you get points depending on how we go. So if, for example, and we're not going to know what the other one's going to do, right? But if we both have our thumbs up, then we get 3 points each. If one of us puts our thumb up and the other puts the thumb down, the one who wanted to compete gets 5 points, okay? And the one who wanted to cooperate gets 0 points. Okay, so you're getting the game? However, if we both say we want to compete, we only get 1 point each. Okay, so give it some thoughts. Here we go. We're going to play this game. So once again, if we're going to say 1, 2, 3, reveal. And if we both are doing this, 3 points each. If one of us is doing that, but the other's doing that, 5 points, 0 points. And if we both go that way, it's only 1 point. All right, friends, here we go. Are you ready? Thumbs out. 1, 2, 3, reveal. Okay, I'm looking on the screen here. I can see some thumbs are up. So if your thumb is up, then we get 3 points each. However, I noticed Carla looks like wants to compete. So in the game we played, you get 5 points. I get no points. Okay, now we do it again. Are you ready? Back to the center. Keep check on how many points you've got. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, reveal. Oh, okay. So here we can stop playing the game. Do you know what they did? Professor Axelrod said, I want you to submit, these computer programmers, submit a strategy you want to try and get as many points as possible. How would you play against this other player, these other strategies that you don't know what they're going to do? And so he had 16 different entries to the different strategies, different approaches for playing this game. And then each of the strategies played the other strategy 200 times, right? So this is a big network here. Everyone's playing against each other. And here was the fascinating results. Do you know that of those 16 strategies, these different approaches for playing that game, all the top 8, right? The top 8 best performing strategies all had one thing in common. And do you know what it was? They all started in the first round by going thumbs up. He called it, what he said, they were nice strategies, not nasty strategies. They were nice. They wanted to cooperate with people. They wanted to compliment people. And then, and so all 8, and the reason for that is this: when people wanted to compete, then very soon the other strategy went, oh, you always want to compete? Okay, I'll compete too. And then eventually everyone only gets 1 point each round. Whereas this way they could have at least got 3 points each round. So yeah, they may have stolen 5 points, on the first round, but things very quickly went downhill. So one of the takeaways from this is be nice. Right? Actually, when in your interactions with other people, start nice. Then the best performing strategy, interestingly enough, what it did? It started nice, and if the other strategy that it was playing against wanted to go to compete, it would go, okay. And then the next round, it would say, I'll give them one more chance. So it would go nice again. But if the other strategy wanted to compete again, then the round after that, then it would also do the same thing. And this was the takeaway. So I love the way I frame this is what a computer game teaches us about how to relate to other people. Number one, be nice. Start nice in your interactions with other people. And I think this is a good lesson we can share with others. Start nice. Want the best for someone else. Number two, if someone doesn't quite get it right and want to be nice back, just give them a little bit of grace, right? Be a little bit forgiving, right? But then the last point is also don't be a pushover. So when people are consistently like that, well, don't let them push you around too much either. So I think I find that a fun little experiment, and I think so telling about how maybe what we can learn from a computer game about how to relate to other people. Really interesting, just to finish off this note about relationships and the importance of relationships in helping us to thrive. Increasingly, people are turning to AI, like ChatGPT and other sort of AI agents for companionship. And because so many people are lonely, it is interesting that that AI, where originally early days of ChatGPT, we would use it for gathering information and helping us to write things. Now it's becoming very much a companion. I've got my phone here. I have the paid version, and and it's an audio version. I speak with ChatGPT in the car all the time. And it's a lady's voice. It's a nice voice. She's very conversational. And it actually is quite interesting how you do tend to talk to them as if they are another person. And so I'm going to be very interested to see what happens in that space. It's interesting, this article that just came out, it referred to AI as emotional fast food. And it says it's instantly gratifying, but ultimately lacking substance. And I thought to myself, this is an interesting observation. Do you know, my fear is that whilst I think it's a valuable tool, but you know what? It's a one-way tool. Relationships involve us not just getting, but also giving to. And I think that it undermines, it takes away from our humanity when we're interfacing only with with a computer program. There is huge value in our relationships to having to learn to give and to take. In fact, we rise by lifting others. And so I think there's huge value, and it's going to be an interesting place to watch that as it begins to emerge. Okay, friends, so what does it take to thrive in life? The research suggests positive emotion. We need some of that in our life, and I hope that you experience lots of it, but you're not going to be able to hold on to it all of the time. I hope that you experience a sense of engagement, doing things that you get to love to do. And I hope that the work that you do, that you enjoy, and you have moments of being highly engaged in that, because we spend so much of our time at work. So there's huge value in that. I hope that you get to do things that give you that sense of mastery, challenging things that you actually have to work at, that actually give you that sense of accomplishment. And then above all, I hope that you value your relationships, right? That you give to your relationships, and that that you nurture them and prioritize them, because it's easy to put them, that it's easy to, for example, pursue things that, like achievement, be dedicated to our work and not prioritize our relationships. But in doing that, we're actually not choosing the best. We're not going as deep as we could. And then this leads us to the last, the M. What I think, and I think the research is very, speaks to this. And in fact, in the words of Martin Seligman, this is what Martin Seligman, that professor of positive psychology, he says, just as a good life is better than a pleasant life, right? And what he means by that is just as having relationships, good positive relationships, and a sense of achieving good things and enjoying the things you do, that they make a good life. He said that's better than a pleasant life, which a pleasant life is just lots of positive emotion. But he says this quote, just as a good life is better than a pleasant life, a meaningful life is better than a good life. And so the last M is what is referred to as meaning. It seems that in fundamentally, for we humans to thrive at our deepest levels, we need a sense of meaning, right? And so where does that come from? And I love, this is the work of Emily Asfani-Smith, and she says there are actually 4 pathways to experiencing more meaning in our life. And as I, just share what these are briefly, I'd love you to reflect on, well, what does this look like for you, right? And how meaningful do you feel that your life is and what you do? The first one she says is belonging, right? So, and this sort of relates to the relationships thing, but it goes a little bit beyond that too. What she says is that life becomes more meaningful when we feel that we belong to something bigger than ourselves, right? And that could be, yes, our family unit. It could be that belonging to something bigger than ourselves might be an organisation. It might be a community. It might be a faith community. So having that sense of belonging to something bigger than yourself, we know produces, is meaningful for people. Having a sense of purpose, right? And another way of framing this is when we feel that we're serving or contributing to something bigger than ourselves, right? And you'll see there's a theme that emerges here. Meaning comes from actually getting outside of ourselves. And I think that, this is something that we need to be, we live in a very narcissistic society, where it's very much where people are often internally focused. It's about them. And what the irony, here is that if you actually want to experience the deepest levels of flourishing, right, which comes through a meaningful life, it's about it's getting outside ourselves. It's actually something bigger that we're part of. So she says, so your purpose comes from contributing to something bigger than yourself in some way, and that might be a social cause. It might be, serving in your family context. It can be the smallest thing. It might be caring for a pet or a garden, or but contributing to something bigger than yourself. I find it interesting. There's a quote that jumped out at me when I read it, and it said, we become depressed when we have our minds turned agonizingly inward. Right. And what this is, these are about getting outside ourselves, actually, doing something for the greater good. That's the polar opposite of that. And I think that this is why we do indeed rise by lifting others. Right. I think there's huge value to this piece. So pathways to meaning, belonging, having a sense that you belong to something bigger than yourself, having a sense of purpose that you contribute to something bigger than yourself. The third pathway is having what she refers to as these transcendent moments, right? And what is transcendence? It's about having those moments where you get lifted to something bigger than yourself, right? And that could be that occurs in different ways for different people. A couple of years ago, not last year, the year before, I went to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And it was in Dallas. It was in Denver, in Colorado. And I had some friends from Australia join me at the end of the conference, and we went on a road trip to all the national parks, and we did some trail running. And I remember going to the Grand Canyon and walked up to the edge, and you think, where is this thing? And then all of a sudden you get to the edge of the Grand Canyon, and I don't know if you've been there before, but it's just, it's actually, for me, it was like a transcendent moment when all of a sudden you just see the magnitude of this thing and things, you see the big picture. You're lifted up to something bigger and you feel really small, but it's sort of a beautiful small in some regards. And those transcendent moments, for some people, it might be through the arts, or it might be through music, and we get lifted up, where all of a sudden those daily worries and cares, you get lifted out of the trees and you can see the forest. For many people around the world, this is through faith experiences, through religious practices, through worship experiences, where you're elevated and you're sort of like in that space where the daily hassles sort of just fall by the wayside for a period of time. And we know that those sorts of experiences for people can be very meaningful and actually getting lifted, elevated to something bigger than ourselves. So, belonging to something bigger than ourselves, contributing to something bigger than ourselves, being lifted up to something bigger than ourselves, these are all very meaningful. And the last pathway that she describes, and I like this, and I'm not sure that it's its own pathway. I think what it is it's a way of wrapping these three other things up. And that is she talks about storytelling. And what happens is when we share stories, and Indigenous communities, they did this well, they do this well, and we can learn from them. This process of storytelling. You see, the best stories, you think about this. I love, for example, a good movie, and I love, like some of my favorite movies are like The Lord of the Rings. And what these stories are about, the stories that draw us in, they actually they create belonging. Like even The Lord of the Rings, one of the first one is called The Fellowship of the Rings. Because what it is, it's about a group of people coming together to do some noble cause. So there's that purpose piece in there. And when you get captured up in these, a good book or a good story, you get drawn into them, and they lift you up. They transcend you for a moment. And so I think storytelling is actually this powerful pathway for promoting meaning, and when done well. And what's interesting is when we share stories, and if I was in the room and we got to talk and you shared your stories, and I shared my story, and then what we realize is that, hey, we're connected here. Our stories connect us, and that we're all part of a bigger narrative that's going on. And I love this about lifestyle medicine. I love the fact that here I am in Australia, and I'm getting to connect with you there in Chile. And 2 days ago, I was speaking to the Sri Lankan Lifestyle Medicine Society. We're all working towards this common good cause, and all of our stories are united, by this bigger story that's taking place, and that's deeply meaningful. It's actually a wonderful work to be part of because of that. It very much promotes meaning. So, what does it take to flourish? Well, all of these things. But I do think that, that the top level is more superficial, and we come down to these deep levels. And so what I would really hope for you is, yes, that you experience plenty of positive emotion, that you get to do things that you enjoy, that you're engaged in, that you experience that sense of accomplishment, that you prioritize your relationships, and that you get to do things that are deeply meaningful for you. Right? And that, because I think that is where the real substance of a thriving life comes from. So that's my hope for you. Hey, I just want to say, real pleasure for me to join you. If I run a thing called the Lift Project, which is about trying to help people to thrive. and lift is used all around the world now. If you're interested in some of the things that I've been speaking about, sorry, we don't have the translation might not work for you so much, but we do actually run a podcast called the Lift Podcast, and once a month you can get more details at our website there. But we run a free get together, so we call it a Lift meetup, where I present a little bit of a wellbeing topic, some topic on the latest research that's being done, and then we get to have a bit of a chat about it. So you'd be more than welcome to join us for that if that was of interest to you as well. So I'm going to stop talking there and just say, yeah, hey, look, thank you so much for the opportunity to be. I'll stop sharing my screen. Yeah, but we've got a few moments if there are any questions or comments or reflections. I can now see what was written in the chat, although I probably won't be able to read it anyway.
Sí.
Yeah,
Muchas
I'll
gracias,
hand it over.
Darren. Vamos a dejar un espacio de preguntas, las pueden hacer a viva voz, tenemos la traductora, así que, y si no, podemos pasar a leer las que están en el chat. En el chat hay muchas felicitaciones y agradecimientos, Darren. Y un par de preguntas, pero primero quiero dejar un espacio a aquellas personas que quieran hacer un comentario. Ya, bueno, voy a proceder entonces un poquitito a leer lo que me escribieron en el chat. Bueno, muchas gracias, bendiciones y muy contentos de escuchar lo que decía sobre inteligencia artificial. Preguntan acá si podrían explicar un poco sobre lo fácil de convencer y perdonar, hasta qué punto. A veces se siente que no siempre se puede perdonar, siempre hay límites. No sé si te puedes referir un poquitito a eso.
Sure. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Hey, you know what? I have, and look, this is not hard, so I'm not going to pretend that it is. I have a special interest in the whole idea of forgiveness, and I have a friend, Dr. Dick Tibbets, who's written a lot on this work, on this area, and done a lot of research. And he wrote a book that might be helpful if anyone's interested, called "Forgive to Live." And what he points out, and it was so educational for me, he points out that forgiveness is not about forgetting. He said, we know that the way our emotional brains are wired, you can't, when you're being hurt, when there's strong emotion attached to something, you will remember that. So it's very hard to forget. And he said, so forgiving is not forgetting. Forgiving is not also, it's not about saying it was okay. Right. And it's also not about saying that there should be no consequences for what happened. Right. So he said there's a lot of misunderstanding around what forgiveness actually is. But this is the definition that he has of forgiveness that I really like. He says, forgiveness is me giving up my right to hurt you for hurting me. So I'll say it again. Forgiveness is me giving up my right to hurt you for hurting me. And what the point he makes here is that often what happens is in our relationships, right? Okay, there's some sort of hurt, and then what happens is, so that person will hurt that person, and then I'll do something to try and hurt them back and back and back, and all you get is in these vicious cycles of hurt. Hurt people hurt people. And he said, what forgiveness is, it's actually not so much for the other person, it's actually for you. What forgiveness is about is you saying, you know what, I'm going to be a circuit breaker here. I'm going to be the one who is going to not be in this negative place of trying to hurt you, because that damages me, right? I don't want to live like that, right? I actually would like to step into a place of, more freedom, and I'm going to be the one that decides that it stops here, right? I'm not going to, be the one that keeps this cycle of unforgiveness going. Now, does that mean that, that I've forgotten about it? No. Does it mean that I should trust you again? Not necessarily. Does it mean there shouldn't be any consequences? No. No, it's none of those things. It's not about forgiving and forgetting and pretending it never happened. It's about what we do for ourselves so that we can be in a more positive place. Right. And Dick Tippett's work is very enlightening. It's actually it's liberating the person. Forgiveness liberates the forgiver, not necessarily the person being forgiven. So look, it's obviously a very deep topic, and I don't want to make light of it or gloss over it because some horrendous things happen. But I think that I do like his approach to it. And his book, I think, Forgive to Live, might be really helpful if that's an area that you're interested in learning more about.
Muchas gracias, Darren. Muy completa la respuesta. También preguntan si te puedes referir a la depresión y a los adolescentes. ¿Por qué los adolescentes tienen tanta depresión y se suicidan?
Mm. I mean, this is just so tragic, and we're seeing it world over, around the world. Look, there are many factors that I think are contributing to it, and some of them are as simple as what I mentioned. I don't think young people are getting outdoors enough, and experiencing things like natural light, so they can be really important things. But look, I think the greater damage that's being done, are devices. I think social media is devastatingly bad for young people's brains. And we live, I mean, I'm 55, but when I went to school, kids could be bullied, and there'd be bullying in the schoolyard, but then you went home and it was done, and you didn't have to worry about it till the next day. Whereas these poor young people, there's the messages they're receiving. There are kids that are on their phones all night long getting messages, and then they talk about upward comparison. Social media, people tend to put on, post the good things about their life, and then everyone else looks at this and says, "Oh, my life's not like that. My life sucks." And so, there's a whole cascade of events, I think. And look, and so yes, social media, I think, is a major problem. I think the lifestyle habits of many young people is a major problem. I think, and there is some, I work at a university and I chat with the young people and try and get an idea as to where they're at in their headspace. I think that young people don't have the same level of optimism towards the future that certainly I did. I think when I was their age, the future was bright. We were going to do these great things, and we could, we'd be able to do this and that. There's a lot of uncertainty for people nowadays. They're worried about, what AI will eventually do to us, climate change, geopolitical issues. If you talk with young people, and the afford in Australia, they can't afford houses anymore. So there's that not that same sense of optimism, I think, that there once was. So yeah, I think young people have a lot of challenges presented to them. So I think it's very multifactorial, but certainly they are some of the factors that are playing into it.
Muchas gracias, Darren. Y para finalizar, hay una última pregunta que dice, bueno, además de los factores que tú ya mencionaste, ¿podrías mencionar otros factores protectores que podrían llevar a contrarrestar el fenómeno que están viviendo los adolescentes?
So was that a question, or was there
Sí,
someone
otros
who said,
factores se podrían mencionar aparte de los que ya él mencionó. Es una pregunta.
uh, I don't, yeah, look, I think, obviously people's lifestyle, I mean, life circumstances affect it too. I don't know. Yeah, I probably not off the top of my head, but I think that it's definitely very multifactorial.
Sí, sí, muy bien. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias por la exposición. Todos quedamos, yo creo, sin duda, muy reflexivos en relación a cómo estamos llevando nuestras vidas y claramente te agradecemos el espacio, tu conocimiento y la energía que nos transmitiste, así que muchas gracias por el espacio nuevamente. Gracias a todos también por conectarse, ya, por participar y quedar hasta el final. Te contamos que además esta webinar va a quedar grabado en nuestra plataforma, así que va a poder reproducir todas las veces que, que tengamos interés de volver a escuchar tu mensaje. Muchas gracias y buena
Thank you
tarde
so
y buenos
much.
días.
It's a real pleasure to be with you. And friends, look after yourselves. Because as carers, you have to make sure that you keep filling your own cup. So I hope that some of the things that maybe we've talked about might be helpful to you. But yeah, special privilege and blessing for me to be to meet with you all. Have a great evening.